Hi, you know where I am today? If you can guess, you can get your Bible covered in suede or leather or floral fabric, denim, jean, your choice. Let me know. Preferably during this virus time when my little hands need work to do. So, we're looking into Proverbs chapter 30, the fourth numerical saying by Agur. The title is Four Unbearable Things. So if you have your Bible open, check out Proverbs 30. It starts in verse 21 and goes to verse 23. Four unbearable things. The earth trembles under three things. It cannot bear up under four. A servant when he becomes a king, a fool when he's stuffed with food, an unloved woman when she marries, and a servant girl when she ousts her queen. You know, there are many people, once this virus blows over, there are going to be people stacked up at the hair salon to get a haircut, to have their hair done. Thankfully, my wife trimmed the edges of my hair, for which I'm very thankful. But just imagine with me, you arrive at your hairdresser's, and rather than the usual person who does your hair, there's been a replacement. Say your regular hairdresser is still under quarantine; they haven't fully recovered. So there's a stand-in, but they've never cut hair before. In fact, their expertise is in counting money. They're an accountant. How well will that go with you? Will you sit down in the chair and let her pick up the scissors and the buzzer and start going away at it? Or right after having your hair done, you need to board a bus to go into Boston and schedule that voluntary surgery that you've had to put off. So you emerge from the hair salon, you stand at the bus stop, and get on board the bus, only to find out that the bus driver has been replaced by a waitress. Nevertheless, you find your way into Boston safely, go to the doctor's office, and the nurse, who usually sort of precedes the doctor, you're there for a consultation with your surgeon, but the nurse, who tends to you first, isn't back to work yet. They pulled in an electrician to just fill in that spot. Well, now it's time to actually sit down for consultation with your surgeon who's going to be doing the surgery. And you go into his office only to discover somebody with sort of a blue jeans overalls there behind the desk, and you learn that he's the local plumber. People tremble. That's what the verse says here in verse 21. The earth trembles. That is, the earth dwellers, people in the earth. They tremble under three things. It cannot bear up under four. A servant when he becomes a king. A flip-flop of roles. People tremble when untrained, inexperienced, unprepared, unqualified folks are suddenly put into positions of power, and it's just not fitting. It's not appropriate. It's very unseemly. It can be downright dangerous. And so this first unbearable thing is a servant, a slave, when he's suddenly promoted to the top spot. He's the king. One author says this: the undeserved honor will flatter his conceit and provoke him to oppress those around him or under him. The purpose or the value of that office he wrongly holds will suffer, for he cannot comprehend its responsibility or properly execute its tasks. And of course, the grand exception to that is Joseph of Egypt, who so handled that quantum leap, that promotion from dungeon to palace, when God promoted him, because he was God's prince, whom the Lord was grooming there in the prison, preparing him to be promoted. But that's the exception, not the rule. So the earth trembles under such things. It just cannot bear up under such a unbecoming, unsuitable switch of roles. The second one is there also in verse 22. A fool when he's stuffed with food. A fool when he's stuffed with food. A foolish, silly, obstinate person indulging in excess is like a sword in a madman's hand. It's just not. It's not seemly. It's help us wrap our minds around this. Somebody who is suddenly catapulted from a social status, an socioeconomic status, a lowly one, an average one, a common one, catapulted to that of a multimillionaire, like Jack Whittaker. You remember him. In December of 2002, Jack Whittaker, you would see him on TV, by the way, after this took place. He always dressed in black pants, black shirt, black cowboy hat. Jack Whittaker. He would frequent a diner, and sort of a folksy fellow from West Virginia, who on this particular date, because the lottery had swelled to just hundreds of millions of dollars, he opted to buy a Powerball ticket that day, just before Christmas, 2002. And on Christmas Day, the winner was announced, and it was, guess who? Jack Whittaker. Catapulted from the average Joe to the status of a multi-million. It was $314 million. Jack opted to take a one-time payout that was $113 million. Well, he initially made all kinds of promises. He was going to tithe 10% to his church. He was going to equip friends of his who were pastors with brand new churches. He was going to be giving away lots of it. He was married, by the way, 40 years to his wife. Had a daughter, granddaughter. And, well, I won't go into detail, but in summary, his life was completely ruined. New Year's Eve, that same year, just a week and a half after Christmas, he was seen strutting into a local strip joint, slapped $50,000 cash on the bar top. Rounds for everybody. Even the bar owner warned him, said, "Jack, put away the money. knowing that the kind of clientele that came into that joint, they would knock a guy in the head for a $5 bill. Here's Jack with 50,000 cash. Well, that was just the beginning of his troubles. His life started downhill, and he refresh your memory, as I did this morning, of Jack Whitaker when he went from well, the fool when he is stuffed with food. A third case scenario, verse 23. An unloved woman when she marries. An unloved woman, literally is a hated woman when she gets a husband. Makes one wonder why she was hated. And was it prior to her marriage that she was hated? Was she disliked by many? She was an unlikable person. Was it after she got married? She was hated, unloved. Oftentimes, Bible versions will use the word odious. An odious woman. Again, borrowing for some rather insightful authors, she pays off with interest the slights which she formerly had to endure from her married friends. So picture a woman who at last is married, overlooked by many a man for many years, and finally cajoles somebody into marrying her. The author goes on to say, there may well be good reason that this ill-tempered, haughty, dictatorial woman was overlooked. But now, those formerly concealed hateful qualities, characteristics, rise to the surface. And having, by her cunning, deceitfulness, landed an unsuspecting husband, she's just absolutely intolerable. The world just cannot bear up under her husband, certainly. Woe to him. Fourth scenario, also verse 23. And a servant girl when she ousts her queen. Now, this is probably the most difficult of the four to wrap our minds around. A servant girl when she displaces her mistress, the lady of the house. Genesis chapter 16, the story of Abraham and Sarah, unable to have a child, although God promised them, you're going to have a son who will be a tremendous blessing to the world, and so on. Years go by and no baby. And so Sarah develops the idea that, you know what, if my husband and my maiden here, my servant, Hagar, have a baby, maybe that can make it happen. Maybe we can sort of jumpstart this promise. And so if you just refresh your memory, go to Genesis 16, you'll see that she no sooner puts that idea into practice, Hagar becomes pregnant and immediately looks at her mistress, the lady of the home, Sarah, with contempt. And there is just warfare in the home from that point forward. There is a wonderful psalm I think it's the shortest psalm, Psalm 131, that goes like this. Lord, my heart's not proud. My eyes are not haughty. I do not get involved with things too great or too wonderful for me. A great deal of wisdom to be had just from this short little psalm. I don't get involved with things too high, too lofty, too wonderful for me. I don't aspire to a social economic status that just is ill-fitting for me and I for it. Instead, he says, I have calmed and quieted my soul like a weaned child with its mother. My soul is like a weaned child. You picture that young one on the lap of his mom, her mom, resting on the breast that she once suckled from. Now just content, just satisfied. And lastly, the thought that goes along with this. Lucifer had it made. He was that morning star. He was that angel of some of the highest ranking order. And he, being discontent and wanting more, abandoned his proper abode and destroyed everything. So, that you and I would find God to be sufficient, would be content with what he gives us, what he lavishly, supernaturally, graciously provides us, and just be content with him.